Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had Sword of Hope quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built equally. That was the hard truth Izuku Midoriya learned at the tender age of 4. It wasn't a lesson taught in a classroom, nor was it something he read in a picture book about heroes and villains. It was a sterile, white-walled reality delivered by a doctor with a bushy mustache and a clipboard that held the weight of a death sentence. You should probably give it up, kid. Those words echoed in Izuku's mind, bouncing around the hollow spaces of his memory like a marble in an empty can. They had defined the last 10 years of his life. They were the preamble to every insult, the caption to every bruise, and the subtext of every pitying look his mother gave him when she thought he wasn't looking. But humans are stubborn creatures. And Izuku Midoriya, for all his timid trembling and stuttering apologies, possessed a stubbornness that bordered on insanity. He looked down at his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. The cover was slightly charred at the edges, a souvenir from a previous encounter with Katsuki Bakugo, but the pages were intact. His pen scratched furiously against the paper, sketching the silhouette of Empty Lady, the newest debutante on the hero scene. Gigantification, he wrote, his muttering barely audible over the hum of the classroom. Powerful, undeniably flashy, and perfect for crowd control and disaster management. However, the collateral damage risk is high in urban environments with narrow streets. She needs to be careful about infrastructure costs. Midoriya, the voice snapped him out of his trance. Izuku flinched, his pen skidding across the page, leaving a jagged line through Empty Lady's left leg. He looked up to see the teacher standing at the podium, a stack of career aptitude forms in his hand. The rest of the class was already looking at him, some with amusement, others with boredom. Yes, sir? Izuku squeaked. Since you're muttering so loudly, the teacher said, his tone dry. Perhaps you'd like to share your plans for the future with the class? I assume you're still aiming for UA High. The silence that followed was heavy, sudden, and suffocating. It lasted for exactly 1 second before the explosion happened. Ha! Katsuki Bakugo kicked his feet up onto his desk, leaning his chair back with a dangerous creak. Teach, don't lump me in with these extras! And definitely don't lump me in with Deku. The class erupted into laughter. It was a familiar sound, a chorus of mockery that Izuku had memorized in every pitch and tone. Midoriya? No way, you need a quirk to be a hero, idiot! He's just gonna study general ed, right? Imagine a quirkless hero. He'd die in 5 minutes! Izuku shrank into his seat, wishing he possessed a mutant-type quirk that would allow him to turn into a tortoise and retract into a shell. I've been studying, he stammered, his voice weak. They got rid of the rule that says you need a quirk. If I just work harder than everyone else, so you're gonna be a punching bag? Is that the plan? Bakugo's hand smoked, small pops of nitroglycerin snapping like firecrackers. You think you can rub shoulders with me? You're worse than the rejects. You're quirkless. You're nothing. Izuku looked down at his hands. They were scarred from taking notes, calloused slightly from nervous wringing, but otherwise ordinary. No fire, no ice, no super strength. Just skin and bone, nothing. The sun was setting by the time school let out, casting long, bruised shadows across the streets of Muzurifu. The air was thick with the humidity of early summer, promising a storm that hadn't quite arrived yet. Izuku walked the long way home. He usually did. It gave him time to decompress, to mentally bandage the wounds on his pride before he had to face his mother. Inko Midoriya worried enough as it was. She didn't need to see the slump in his shoulders or the fresh burns on his notebook. He held the book against his chest, clutching it like a lifeline. Bakugo had tossed it out the window earlier, into the koi pond. Izuku had fished it out, dried it off, and told himself it was fine. It was still readable. The dream was still readable. Just forget it, he told himself, kicking a loose stone along the pavement. Kaken is right. Everyone is right. What can I actually do? I can't shoot lasers. I can't lift a bus. I'm just me. He approached the underpass that served as a shortcut to his apartment complex. It was a dark, tunnel-like structure, the concrete stained with grime and graffiti. The acoustics were terrible. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot. As he walked into the shadow of the tunnel, he started to mutter again. It was a coping mechanism, a way to fill the silence. Maybe if I focus on support items? If I can train my body to peak physical condition, I could use gadgets to simulate quirk effects. There's a hero in America who uses grappling hooks. Slop. Drip. The sound came from behind him. Wet, viscous, and heavy, Izuku froze. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, a primal instinct that predated quirks, a warning system from the days when humans were prey. He turned around slowly. The manhole cover clattered to the ground. Rising from the grate was a nightmare. It was a shifting, pulsating mass of dark green sludge, liquid and solid all at once. Two manic, bulging eyes floated in the muck, followed by a mouth full of jagged, yellow teeth. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain rasped, his voice bubbling like boiling tar. Izuku's breath hitched. His legs, usually so quick to run from bullies, were rooted to the spot. Fear, cold and absolute, washed over him. No! Izuku whispered. The sludge lunged. It was faster than anything liquid had the right to be. Before Izuku could scream, the mass slammed into him. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose coating his eyes. It tasted like sewage and rot. Don't struggle, kid! The villain whispered right into his ear, the voice vibrating through the slime filling Izuku's auditory canals. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. I just need to hide inside you until the hero leaves town. Consider it a public service. Izuku clawed at the fluid. His fingers sank into the muck, finding no purchase. He couldn't breathe. His lungs burned, screaming for oxygen that wasn't there. I'm dying, he thought, panic flaring into terror. This is it. I'm going to die here, in a tunnel, drowned by a villain I don't even know. I never got to tell Mom I'm sorry. I never got to be a hero. His vision began to spot with black dots. His strength was fading. His arms felt like lead. The villain's laughter bubbled around him, a wet, suffocating sound. Please. Someone. Anyone. Clang. The manhole cover flew into the air again, struck by a force from below. Have no fear! The voice boomed, echoing off the concrete walls with enough power to rattle Izuku's teeth. It was a voice Izuku had listened to thousands of times on YouTube clips. A voice that meant safety. A voice that meant victory. For I am here! Through the blurring, darkening tunnel of his vision, Izuku saw a figure. Tall, muscular, clad in a white t-shirt and cargo pants, but unmistakably him, the symbol of peace. All Might, the sludge villain shrieked. All Might? You persistent bastard! The villain lashed out, sending tendrils of slime whipping toward the hero like spears. All Might didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He simply pulled back a fist. Texas! Smash! The punch didn't even make contact. The sheer wind pressure generated by the blow was like a hurricane compressed into a single point. The air blast hit the villain with the force of a freight train. The slime was blown apart, splattering against the tunnel walls in a chaotic spray. Izuku was released. He hit the ground hard, gasping, coughing up fluid, his lungs greedily sucking in the sweet, dusty air of the underpass. He lay there for a moment, trembling, his eyes watering. When he finally looked up, All Might was standing over him, a massive hand extended. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. All Might laughed, a boisterous sound that seemed to chase away the shadows. I got a little distracted chasing this guy through the sewer system. Gross work, but someone has to do it. Izuku stared. He blinked, trying to clear the tears and the residual slime from his eyes. It wasn't a dream. The number one hero was standing right there. All. Izuku scrambled backward, fumbling for his backpack. Notebook! I need autograph. Where is it? He ripped the sodden notebook open. There, on a blank page, All Might had already signed his name in massive, sweeping strokes that took up 2 pages. He already did it! Izuku screamed internally. Thank you. Thank you so much. This will be a family heirloom. I'll treasure it forever. Think nothing of it, citizen. All Might gave a thumbs up, picking up 2 plastic soda bottles that now contained the swirling remains of the sludge villain. Now I must get this guy to the police. Stay safe. He crouched down, muscles tensing in his legs, preparing to leap. Wait. Izuku reached out. I have to ask you something. No time! All Might launched himself into the air. The wind pressure knocked Izuku back, but desperation, that stubborn, insane desperation, took over. Without thinking, Izuku grabbed onto All Might's leg. What followed was a terrifying ascent into the sky, the wind whipping at Izuku's face, turning his cheeks into rippling sheets of skin. Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive! All Might shouted over the wind, trying to shake his leg. If I let go, I'll die! Izuku screamed, clinging for dear life. Oh. Right. They landed on a rooftop a few minutes later. Izuku collapsed, his knees knocking together, his soul slowly returning to his body. That was reckless. All Might chided, though he looked strangely weary. Steam was rising from his body. I really have to go, kid. The police are waiting. Wait. Izuku scrambled to his feet. Please. Just one question. All Might paused, his back to Izuku. Izuku clenched his fists at his sides. This was it. The question that had haunted him for a decade. The question the doctor had answered with a clipboard, and Bakugo had answered with an explosion. He needed the answer from the one person who mattered. Can I be a hero even if I don't have a quirk? The wind blew across the roof, carrying the distant sounds of the city. Izuku kept his eyes squeezed shut, terrified of the silence. I've always been picked on, Izuku confessed, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. Everyone thinks I'm useless. But I want to save people. I want to save everyone with a smile, just like you. I want to be a cool hero who gives people hope. He opened his eyes. He expected to see the towering figure of the symbol of peace. Instead, standing in a cloud of dissipating steam, was a skeleton of a man. Sunken eyes, sharp cheekbones, and limbs that looked like dry twigs. Izuku screamed. An imposter? You deflated, the man sighed, sitting down heavily on the roof railing. He lifted his shirt, revealing a scar that looked like a spiderweb of purple, mangled flesh covering half his torso. Izuku gasped, his hands flying to his mouth. Pretty gross, right? The man said, his voice raspy and devoid of the booming heroism from before. I got this in a fight 5 years ago. Respiratory system half destroyed. Stomach gone. I've done so many surgeries I've lost count. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now. The rest of the time, I'm this. 5 years ago, Izuku murmured. Was that the fight with Toxic Chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might said, a faint smile touching his lips. But no. That punk couldn't do this to me. This was a villain the world doesn't know about. I kept it covered up. The symbol of peace can't be seen bleeding, kid. I smiled to show the pressure of heroes and to trick the fear inside of me. He looked Izuku in the eye. The gaze was intense, stripping away the fantasy Izuku had built his life around. Pros are always risking their lives, All Might said quietly. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. So no. I honestly don't think you can be a hero without a quirk. The world stopped. Izuku felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. I see, Izuku whispered. His voice was hollow. If you want to help people, All Might continued, standing up and walking toward the door to the stairwell. You could be a police officer. They get a lot of crap because the heroes capture the villains, but it's a fine profession. He opened the door. It's not wrong to dream. But you have to be realistic, kid. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. The walk down the stairs was a blur. The walk through the streets was a fugue state. Be realistic. The words were heavier than the sludge villain had been. They settled in his chest, cold and jagged. It's over, Izuku thought. He looked at his hand. It's actually over. The symbol of peace said it. The doctor said it. Kaken said it. I'm the only one who didn't get the memo. He walked without direction. He didn't want to go home. He didn't want to see his mom's face, knowing that tonight he would have to tell her she was right all along. He would have to take down the posters. He would have to burn the notebooks himself. Boom. An explosion rattled the windows of a nearby shop. Izuku flinched, looking up. Smoke was rising from the shopping district a few blocks away. Thick black smoke. A villain attack, his mind supplied automatically. I should go check it out. Take notes. Maybe. He stopped. Why? What's the point? I'm not a hero. I'm just a fanboy with a death wish. He turned away. He started to walk in the opposite direction. But the sounds of the crowd, the screams, and the distinct crump of explosions pulled at him. It was a habit he couldn't break. Even with his heart shattered, his curiosity was a reflex. Just a look, he told himself. One last look at the world I can never join. When he arrived at the scene, it was chaos. Police had set up a barricade. Firefighters were spraying water on burning buildings, and in the center of an alleyway, surrounded by a ring of fire, was the sludge villain. Izuku's blood ran cold. He escaped? But All Might had him in the bottles. Wait, he remembered grabbing All Might's leg. He remembered the feeling of something falling from the hero's pocket. It's my fault, Izuku realized, horror dawning on him. I distracted him. I made him drop the bottles. This is my fault. The heroes were standing around, helpless. Death Arms was punching the sludge and getting stuck. Kamui Woods couldn't get close because of the fire. Empty Lady couldn't fit in the alley. Where is All Might? Someone in the crowd yelled. He's probably chasing another villain. Izuku clutched his chest. All Might wasn't coming. He was out of time. Izuku knew that better than anyone. And then, he saw it. Through the flames, through the shifting green muck of the villain's body, he saw a face. Katsuki Bakugo. The boy who had tormented him for years was drowning. The slime was forcing its way down his throat. Bakugo was thrashing, setting off explosions in a blind panic, but the blasts were only creating more fire, trapping him further. Their eyes met. Bakugo's eyes were usually filled with arrogance and anger. But right now, they were wide, white-rimmed, and filled with a raw primal terror. They were pleading, "Help me." Izuku's mind went blank. The logic, the fear, All Might's words, they all evaporated. His legs moved on their own. Hey! Kid! Get back here! Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. He ducked under the police tape. He sprinted toward the fire. The heat was intense, singeing his eyebrows, drying his eyes instantly. What am I doing? His mind screamed. I'm going to die. I have nothing. No quirk. No weapon. He reached back and hurled his backpack. It was a desperate, flailing throw. The bag spiraled through the air and struck the sludge villain in the eye. Arg! The villain flinched, the fluid loosening just enough around Bakugo's mouth. Deku? Bakugo gasped, coughing smoke. Izuku skidded to a halt in front of the sludge, his sneakers melting on the asphalt. He clawed at the slime, trying to dig Bakugo out. Why are you here? Bakugo shouted. I don't know. Izuku yelled back, tears streaming down his face. My legs moved on their own. I couldn't just stand there and watch you die. The sludge villain recovered. The eye that had been hit by the backpack swiveled back to focus on Izuku. You again? The villain roared. I'll kill you this time, you little pest! A massive tendril of sludge rose up, solidifying into a bludgeon the size of a wrecking ball. It cast a shadow over Izuku and Bakugo. This is it, Izuku thought. I'm going to die. I couldn't save him. I couldn't do anything. Fear gripped his heart, squeezing it tight. But beneath the fear, beneath the despair, something else ignited. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was a desperate, burning wish. I want to save him. I want to save him. I want to save him. It was a prayer. A demand? A scream of the soul directed at the unfair universe. Please! Give me the power to save him. Deep inside Izuku Midoriya, something dormant, a genetic sequence that had been sleeping for 14 years, buried under recessive traits and bad luck, snapped awake. It started as a warmth in his solar plexus. Then, it became a fire. Then, it became a star. The heat rushed down his right arm. It wasn't painful, it was comforting. It felt like holding a cup of hot cocoa on a snowy day. It felt like his mother's hug. It felt like hope. Die! The villain shrieked, bringing the tendril down. Izuku threw his right hand up, acting on an instinct he didn't know he possessed. He wasn't trying to punch. He was trying to stop the darkness. Vroom. A sound like a choir of bells chimes through the alleyway. Light exploded from Izuku's grip. It wasn't a shapeless blast. The golden light condensed, hardened, and extended. In the span of a microsecond, the energy took form. A cross guard. A hilt. A blade. A long sword of pure, solidified radiance, 4 feet long and humming with power, materialized in Izuku's hand. The sludge tendril crashed down, and met the blade. There was no resistance. The sword didn't just cut the sludge, it parted it. The dark fluid hissed and evaporated upon contact with the golden edge. The force of the villain's attack was deflected sideways, smashing into the pavement, missing Izuku entirely. Silence fell over the alleyway. Even the fire seemed to dim in the presence of the golden glow. Izuku stood there, eyes wide, staring at the weapon in his hand. It was weightless, yet he could feel its presence. It hummed against his palm, a vibration that synced with his frantic heartbeat. The light it cast was warm, banishing the fear that had paralyzed him seconds ago. What? The sludge villain recoiled, eyeing the glowing blade warily. What is that light? It burns! Bakugo was staring at Izuku. Or rather, at the sword. His mouth hung open. Izuku didn't question it. He didn't analyze it. He just knew what he had to do. He gripped the hilt with both hands. The sword flared brighter, responding to his resolve. Let him go! Izuku screamed. He swung. It wasn't a trained strike. It was a wild, desperate slash. But the sword didn't care about form. It cared about intent. A crescent of golden energy detached from the blade, flying through the air. It struck the sludge holding Bakugo hostage. The light didn't cut Bakugo. It passed harmlessly through his uniform. But when it hit the villain's sludge, it acted like a hot knife through butter. The slime shrieked, boiling away, its cohesion shattered by the overwhelming positive energy of the attack. Bakugo fell forward, released from the prison, gasping for air. You brat! The villain tried to reform, but the parts of him that had been touched by the light were sluggish, refusing to obey. I'll crush you! The villain rose up, a towering wave of muck, intending to swallow both boys whole. Izuku raised the sword again. His arms were shaking. The light flickered slightly. He was tired. So incredibly tired. The sword was draining him, pulling energy from his very muscles. I can't. One more, just one more. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed the back of Izuku's shirt. Another hand grabbed Bakugo. I really am pathetic. A deep voice growled from behind them. Izuku looked back. All Might stood there. He wasn't the skeleton anymore. He had forced himself back into his muscular form, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But his eyes were blazing with a blue fire that matched the intensity of Izuku's sword. I told you off for being reckless, All Might said, his voice trembling with emotion. And then I stood by and watched a child risk his life while I made excuses. I am not worthy of this uniform. All Might? Izuku whispered. The sword in his hand dimmed to a soft shimmer, but didn't vanish. All Might stepped in front of them, shielding both boys. But I am here now, the villain struck. All Might didn't need a sword. He pulled back his fist, blocking the sludge with his other arm. Detroit. Smash! The punch connected with the villain's main mass. The result was less a punch and more a localized weather event. The air pressure shot upward, creating a massive updraft. The wind tore the sludge apart, scattering it into droplets so small they were essentially mist. The clouds above the city swirled, punched open by the sheer force, and within seconds, rain began to fall. The fire was extinguished instantly. The crowd stood in stunned silence as the rain washed over the alley. All Might stood victorious, steam rising from his body. And behind him, Izuku Midoriya collapsed to his knees. The golden sword in his hand flickered once, twice, and then shattered into motes of light that drifted away like fireflies. Darkness took him. Hey! Hey, kid! Wake up, Izuku groaned. His head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. His arms felt heavy, like he had just done 1,000 push-ups. He opened his eyes. He was sitting on the pavement near the police barricade. A paramedic was checking his pulse. He's awake! The paramedic called out. Memory rushed back. The sludge. Bakugo. The sword. Izuku looked at his hands. They were empty. There was no golden blade. Just his scarred, ordinary hands. Was it a dream, he wondered? A hallucination from oxygen deprivation? Midoriya! He looked up. The heroes were crowding around him. But they weren't smiling. What were you thinking? Death Arms shouted, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. You rushed past the barricade. You could have gotten yourself killed. You could have gotten the hostage killed. It was absolute insanity. Kamui Woods added, crossing his arms. You're a civilian. Leave the fighting to the pros. But, Izuku stammered. I had a, and you. Death Arms turned to Bakugo, who was sitting a few feet away, wrapped in a shock blanket. You were incredible. That quirk of yours is flashy and powerful. You've held out against a villain like that for so long. You're going to be a hell of a sidekick one day. The heroes swarmed Bakugo with praise. The contrast was jarring. Bakugo, the victim, was being hailed as a hero. Izuku, the savior, was being scolded like a naughty child. But Izuku didn't mind. He was alive. Bakugo was alive. As the scolding continued, Izuku tried to summon the feeling again. He closed his eyes and focused on his hand. He tried to remember the heat, the light, flicker. For a split second, a faint golden glow emanated from his palm. Huh! Death Arms paused. What was that? A quirk? I thought the registry said you were quirkless? I don't know. Izuku whispered, staring at the fading light. I think it just happened. A late bloomer? Empty Lady peered over. At your age? That's unheard of. Whatever. It's barely a nightlight. Don't try to use it to fight villains, kid. Stick to school. The police shooed Izuku away shortly after. They took his statement, lectured him again, and sent him home. The walk home was different this time. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. The air was cool and clean from the rain. Izuku walked slowly, his mind racing. It wasn't a dream. I made a sword. I cut the sludge. But why now? Why today? And why can't I bring it out now? He flexed his hand. Nothing. It felt like a muscle he didn't know how to flex. Deku! Izuku jumped, turning around. Katsuki Bakugo was running toward him. He looked disheveled, his uniform wet, his eyes furious. He stopped a few yards away, panting. Kaken, listen here! Bakugo yelled, his voice cracking. I didn't ask for your help. And you didn't save me. I was fine on my own. You're a quirkless failure who just got in the way. Don't look down on me, you hear me? He was shaking. Izuku realized with a jolt that Bakugo was terrified. Not of the villain, but of what had happened. Of the fact that the weakling had stepped up when he couldn't. I'm not owing you anything! Bakugo screamed one last time, then turned and stomped away. Izuku watched him go. A week ago, those words would have crushed him. Now they just felt confused. He's right though, Izuku murmured. I didn't really do anything. All Might did the heavy lifting. I am here! Izuku shrieked as All Might dashed out from around a corner, sliding to a halt in a pose. All Might? Izuku gasped. Why are you here? You were swarmed by reporters. I shook them off. All Might laughed. Then blood sprayed from his mouth as he shrunk back down into his skeletal form. Or rather, I ran out of time. He wiped his mouth, looking at Izuku with a serious expression. Kid, I have a confession to make. And a proposal. Izuku swallowed hard. A proposal? Earlier today, on the roof, I told you that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk, All Might said. He leaned against a lamppost. I judged you based on the standards of society. I judged you based on what you were, not who you are. He pointed a bony finger at Izuku's chest. At the scene, the heroes, myself included, we all stood around. We made calculations. We worried about our quirks not being the right match. But you didn't think. You moved. Izuku's eyes welled up. You looked more like a hero than anyone else there, All Might said softly. And that act, that pure, unadulterated desire to save, It unlocked something in you, didn't it? Izuku nodded, tears spilling over. I think so. A sword. It was made of light, a sword born of the heart. All Might mused. I saw it. It was magnificent. It wasn't violence that drove that blade, young Midoriya. It was hope. The hope that you could change the outcome. All Might took a step closer. The setting sun cast long shadows, but All Might seemed to glow even in his weakened state. Top heroes all have stories about their school days. And most of them have one thing in common: their bodies moved before they could think. Today, that happened to you. Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his chest. He was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook his small frame. You told me you wanted to be a hero who gives people hope, All Might said. Well, today you gave me hope. You reminded me of what it means to be a hero. I was going to give up, but you pulled me back into the fight. All Might looked down at the boy. He saw the spirit. He saw the drive. And he saw the potential of that mysterious, golden power. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku looked up, his face a mess of tears and snot. You can become a hero. The words hit Izuku like a physical blow. The dam broke completely. He buried his face in the pavement, crying out the pain of 10 years of rejection. All Might waited. He let the boy cry. When Izuku finally calmed down enough to sit up, All Might knelt down to be at eye level with him. However, All Might said, his tone shifting to one of strict instruction. Desire alone isn't enough. That power you manifested? It barely lasted a minute, and look at you. You're exhausted. Your arms are trembling. If you had tried to maintain that sword for another 10 seconds, you might have passed out and died right there. Izuku nodded, wiping his eyes. It felt heavy. Not physically, but mentally. Exactly, All Might said. That power is linked to your will. And your body is too weak to sustain that kind of energy output. You're like a toddler trying to fire a cannon. The recoil will destroy you. All Might stood up and offered his hand. I am going to train you. Izuku stared at the hand. You train me? Yes. I need a successor. Someone to inherit my will. Someone who understands what it means to save others. All Might paused. He had intended to offer his own quirk, one for all, to the boy. But seeing that sword, that unique, beautiful manifestation of the boy's own spirit, All Might hesitated. He has his own power now, All Might thought. A power that responds to his heart. If I give him one for all now, it might overshadow his own potential. Or worse, the combination might kill him. All Might smiled. No. For now, let's polish the gem he just found. If he can master his own blade of hope, then maybe he'll be ready for the rest later. I won't give you my power, All Might clarified. Not yet. You have awakened something unique, something powerful. But it is raw and dangerous. I will teach you how to build a body that can handle it. I will teach you what it means to be a symbol. He grinned, the familiar, confident smile returning to his skeletal face. It will be hell. You will want to quit. You will vomit. You will cry. But if you follow me, within 10 months, you will be ready for the UA entrance exam. What do you say? Izuku looked at All Might's hand. He looked at his own hand, the hand that had held the light. For the first time in his life, the future wasn't a blank, terrifying void. It was a path. A steep, rocky path, but a path nonetheless. Izuku reached out and grasped All Might's hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were fierce. I'll do it, Izuku said, his voice cracking but firm. I'll work harder than anyone. I'll be the greatest hero. Later that night, the apartment was quiet. Inko had cried for an hour when Izuku came home covered in grime, but after checking him for injuries and feeding him katsudon, she had gone to bed. Izuku sat at his desk. The charred notebook, Hero Analysis number 13, lay open. He turned to a fresh page. He picked up a pen. At the top of the page he wrote, "My quirk." He stared at the words. It felt surreal. He closed his eyes and focused. He thought about the sludge villain. He thought about Bakugo's scared eyes. He thought about All Might's words. You can become a hero. A warmth bloomed in his chest. He opened his eyes and held out his hand. Vroom. A small dagger of light manifested. It wasn't the great longsword from the alley. It was the size of a kitchen knife, flickering and unstable. It buzzed like a dying fluorescent bulb. The light was pale yellow, not the brilliant gold from before. Izuku frowned, concentrating harder. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Maintain it. Make it sharp. The dagger solidified slightly. It cast a gentle glow on his all-might posters. Izuku reached out with his other hand and touched the flat of the blade. It was solid. It was warm. It was real. Sword of Hope. Izuku whispered, naming it. His stomach growled, and suddenly, his exhaustion hit him like a truck. The dagger vanished instantly. Izuku slumped forward onto his desk, panting. It uses stamina, he noted, his voice slurred with sleep. And emotion. If I'm not hopeful, it gets weak. He looked out the window at the stars above Muzurifu. For the first time in 10 years, Izuku Midoriya didn't wish on the stars for a miracle. He didn't need to. The miracle was already in his hands. Now, he just had to sharpen it. He closed the notebook. 10 months, he thought as he drifted off to sleep. Watch me, world. I'm coming. The Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of good intentions. It was a sprawling, suffocating monument to neglect, where the ocean breeze went to die, choked by the stench of rotting rubber, rusting metal, and damp, decomposing household waste. Mountains of trash obscured the horizon, fridges stacked like Jenga towers, tires piled into rubber pyramids, and the skeletal remains of cars half buried in the sand. Izuku Midoriya stood at the edge of the precipice, staring up at a particularly daunting pile of illegally dumped office furniture. He was wearing a dark blue tracksuit that had seen better days, and his sneakers were already sinking into the questionable grime of the beach. It's a lot, Izuku squeaked. It certainly is. All Might stood atop a rusted refrigerator, striking a pose that defied both gravity and the structural integrity of the appliance. In his muscular form, he was a beacon of primary colors in a world of sepia trash. This, young Midoriya, is your first step, All Might bellowed, his voice carrying over the sound of the crashing waves. The path to becoming a hero is not just about spirit. It is about the vessel. The sword of hope you manifested yesterday. It is a quirk of extraordinary potential. But it is also a parasite. Izuku blinked. A parasite? All Might jumped down, landing with a soft thud that kicked up a cloud of dust. He deflated in a puff of steam, reverting to his skeletal, sunken-eyed form. He wiped a trickle of blood from his mouth and sighed. Think about it. You said you felt exhausted after using it for less than a minute. Your arms were shaking. You passed out. All Might poked Izuku's bicep with a bony finger. It squished. This is pudding. Soft, unrefined pudding. Izuku looked down at his arm, blushing. I haven't really done much strength training. The Sword of Hope runs on your stamina. All Might explained, his expression turning serious. It converts your physical energy into solid light. The stronger the emotion, the denser the blade. The denser the blade, the more calories it burns per second. If you tried to summon that great sword from the alleyway right now, in your current state, it would likely metabolize your muscle tissue to sustain itself and kill you in about, 30 seconds. Izuku paled, his soul leaving his body for a moment. Kill me? Extreme fatigue. Organ failure. The works, All Might said cheerfully. So, to wield the light, you must build the lighthouse. You need a body that can endure the drain. You need a core of steel and legs of iron. All Might turned back to the trash heap and swept his arm wide. This beach used to be a beautiful park. Now it's a dump. Your job, for the next 10 months until the UA entrance exam, is to clean it. All of it. Izuku's jaw dropped. He looked at the expanse of trash. It stretched for hundreds of meters. All of it? But that's impossible. Even with trucks. No trucks. All Might wagged a finger. Just you. Moving these heavy objects will build your back, your legs, your grip strength. It's the aim to pass. American Dream Plan. He shoved a stack of papers into Izuku's chest. I've designed a schedule. Meal plans. Sleep cycles. Study blocks. And, of course, the lifting. It's going to be hell, kid. You might want to quit. You might cry. But if you want to wield that sword without it killing you, you have to do this. Izuku looked at the schedule. It was brutal. Every hour of his day was accounted for. There was no free time. No gaming. No hero forums. Just school, sleep, and the beach. He looked at his hand. He tried to summon the light again. A faint, flickering spark, like a dying ember, hovered over his palm for a second before vanishing. Even that tiny effort made him feel like he'd skipped lunch. I have a power, Izuku thought. A real power. But it's useless if I'm weak. He looked up at All Might. The symbol of peace was watching him, a hidden anxiety in his blue eyes. He was gambling on this boy. He was gambling his legacy on a quirkless kid who had manifested a miracle. Izuku gripped the papers tight, crumpling the edges. I'll do it, Izuku said. He didn't shout. He didn't stutter. He just stated it as a fact. I'll clean this whole beach. I'll build the vessel. All Might grinned, the shadows on his face lifting. Good answer. Now start with that tire. Move it to the truck by the road. Month 1, the breaking point. The first month was less about training and more about survival. Every muscle in Izuku's body screamed. He discovered muscles he didn't even know humans possessed. Weird, small muscles in his back and forearms that burned with the fire of 1,000 suns every time he picked up a pencil at school. School became a blur. He would arrive just as the bell rang, smelling faintly of sea salt and rust, and collapse into his seat. Oh, Deku! Izuku lifted his head from the desk, blinking blearily. Bakugo was standing there, looming over him. You look like a corpse. Bakugo sneered. Give up on Yui yet? Or are you just trying to rot away before the exam so you have an excuse? Not rotting, Izuku mumbled, his tongue feeling heavy. Just working out, Bakugo scoffed. Working out? You! He kicked Izuku's desk leg. Don't make me laugh. You're up to something. I saw you walking toward the beach district. Just cleaning, Izuku said, closing his eyes again. Bakugo stared at him for a moment longer, irritation twitching in his eye. The nerd wasn't cowering. He wasn't stuttering out apologies. He was just tired. It pissed Bakugo off more than the usual fear did. It felt like Izuku was ignoring him. TCH, whatever. Just don't die before I get to crush you. The beach was worse. The trash was heavy, jagged, and awkward. Izuku cut his hands on rusted metal daily. He slipped in the sand. He dropped a microwave on his foot. Fortunately, he was wearing steel-toed boots All Might had bought him. But the hardest part was the quirk training. Every evening, after moving trash for 3 hours, All Might made him practice. Draw it out! All Might would yell. Visualize the hope. What are you fighting for? Izuku would stand on a cleared patch of sand, chest heaving, sweat stinging his eyes. He would reach out. I want to be a hero. I want to save people. Flicker. A short sword, maybe 2 feet long, would manifest. It was translucent, yellow, and hummed with a low buzz. Hold it! All Might commanded. Keep the shape. Izuku grit his teeth. The moment the sword appeared, the drain began. It felt like a siphon was attached to his stomach, sucking out his energy. His knees would shake. The sword would wobble, turning from a straight blade into a jagged, lightning bolt shape as his focus wavered. 30 seconds. All Might counted down. Don't let it fade. I can't. You can. Think of the sludge villain. Think of saving young Bakugo. Hope isn't passive, Midoriya. It's an active refusal to give up, Izuku roared, pouring every ounce of his willpower into the blade. It flared bright gold for a second, blindingly bright, before vanishing with a pop. Izuku collapsed into the sand, gasping for air, the world spinning. 22 seconds. All Might noted, writing in a notebook. Better. But the shape is still unstable. You're visualizing a bat, not a sword. You're swinging it like a club. All Might tapped his chin. I'm a puncher, young Midoriya. I smash things. But you are a knight. We need to rethink this. Month 4, the way of the blade. The change happened gradually. By the 4th month, the piles of trash near the entrance were gone. In their place was pristine, golden sand that looked out of place against the backdrop of garbage. Izuku's body was changing, too. The baby fat was melting away, replaced by lean, ropey muscle. His shoulders were broader. His grip was tighter. When he held a pen, he didn't just hold it, he wielded it. But the sword training had hit a wall. Izuku could hold the blade for a minute now, but he had no idea how to use it. One afternoon, All Might arrived with a long, canvas bag slung over his shoulder. "I brought you a present," All Might announced. He pulled out a bakken, a wooden practice sword made of white oak. It was simple, elegant, and solid. "I realize something," All Might said. "I can teach you to be strong. I can teach you to be a hero. But I cannot teach you to be a swordsman. I tried swinging a pipe around yesterday to see if I could figure it out, and I accidentally demolished a lamp post." Izuku suppressed a giggle. "So," All Might continued, handing the bakken to Izuku, "I did some digging. I called in a few favors from some old sidekicks who specialize in weapon arts. And I got you these." He pulled a stack of VHS tapes and DVDs from a plastic bag. Basic kendo forms, The Art of Aido, Hero Analysis, The Crimson Knight's Best Battles. "You're a nerd, young Midoriya," All Might said affectionately. "You learn by analyzing. So analyze. Watch these. Learn the footwork. Learn the grip. Your quirk responds to your mental image. If your mind knows how a sword should feel, the light will follow." That night, Izuku didn't sleep. He watched the tapes. He watched how the masters held their posture. He watched how they didn't use their arms to swing, but their hips. He watched how a sword wasn't just a weapon, but an extension of the soul. The next day at the beach, Izuku didn't summon his quirk. He held the bakken. He stood amidst the garbage, closed his eyes, and assumed the Chudan no Kami stance, the middle guard. Relax the shoulders. Grip with the bottom 3 fingers. The sword is part of the arm. He swung. Whoosh. It was clumsy. He overextended. He swung again. And again. Between hauling tires and dragging scrap metal, he swung the wooden sword. 100 times. 500 times. 1,000 times. He started incorporating the movement into his cleaning. Instead of just lifting a pipe, he would balance it, feeling its center of gravity. Instead of dragging a sheet of metal, he would pivot his hips to move it, using the leverage principles he learned from the tapes. One rainy afternoon, 6 months in, All Might watched from under a yellow umbrella. Izuku was standing before a massive truck tire half buried in the mud. He was exhausted. Mud coated his face. Izuku dropped the bakken. He took a deep breath. Image, he thought. Sharp. Unbreakable. Protective. He raised his right hand. VMMM. The sound was different now. It wasn't a buzz. It was a sing. The sword of hope materialized. It was no longer a jagged, flickering shape. It was a distinct medieval longsword, glowing with a steady, serene golden light. The edges were defined. The cross-guard was symmetrical. Izuku didn't hold it like a bat. He held it with 2 hands, his knuckles aligned. He stepped forward, splashing in a puddle, and swung. He didn't hit the tire. He stopped the blade an inch from the rubber. The control was perfect. The heat radiating from the blade dried the rain falling around him. "I can feel it," Izuku whispered, staring at the light. "It's not just draining me anymore. It's flowing through me." All Might smiled, a genuine, proud smile. "You're getting there, kid. You're forging the vessel." Month 9, the anxiety of progress. The seasons changed. Summer burned away into a crisp autumn, which faded into the biting cold of winter. The beach was unrecognizable. Where there had been mountains of trash, now there was only wind and sand. Izuku had cleared 90% of the park, but as the exam drew closer, a new enemy appeared, doubt. It happened during a mock battle. All Might had set up a training dummy made of stacked tires and wood. "Attack, Midoriya! Imagine it's a villain threatening a civilian!" Izuku charged. He summoned the sword. But as he ran, a thought intruded. What if I fail? What if this is all a fluke? What if I get to the exam and I can't do it? The sword in his hand flickered. It turned from gold to a dull, rusty orange. The weight of it increased tenfold. It felt like he was dragging a steel beam. He swung at the dummy, but the blade was brittle. It shattered upon impact with the rubber tire, dissolving into sparks. Izuku stumbled, falling face first into the sand. "Stop!" All Might called out. Izuku pounded the sand with his fist. "Damn it! Why? I was doing so well." All Might sat down beside him. "Your quirk is Sword of Hope, Midoriya. Not Sword of Muscles." "I know," Izuku muttered. "Do you? Hope isn't just wishing for things to be okay. Hope is the absolute certainty that you will make them okay. When you doubt yourself, you starve the blade. You turn your hope into fear, and fear makes the sword brittle." All Might looked out at the ocean. "You're worried about the exam. You're worried about comparing yourself to others. But look at this beach." Izuku looked. It was almost empty. The sunset reflected off the water, painting the wet sand in hues of orange and purple. 10 months ago, you couldn't see the water," All Might said. "You did this. You moved the impossible. You don't need to hope that you're strong enough, Izuku. You are strong enough. The only thing left is to believe it." Izuku wiped the sand from his face. He looked at his hands, calloused, scarred, and strong. "I did this," he realized. "I moved every single piece." Month 10, the roar. The morning of the exam arrived. Izuku stood at the center of the beach. It was pristine. Not a single wrapper, not a single bolt remained. The sunrise bathed the coast in a glorious light. Atop the very last pile, a rusted truck chassis he had hauled onto a pickup platform, All Might stood. "Oh my goodness!" All Might screamed, reverting to his buff form for the sheer occasion. "You finished it! And with 2 hours to spare!" Izuku stood shirtless in the cold morning air, steam rising from his body. He wasn't the scrawny kid who had stuttered at the doctor's office. He was ripped. He had an 8-pack. His arms were corded with functional muscle. He let out a scream. It wasn't a scream of pain, but of victory. A primal roar that echoed against the seawall. All Might jumped down, landing in front of him. He held out a small, wrapped package. "You did it! You built the vessel! You are ready!" Izuku took the package. He unwrapped it. Inside was a high-quality leather grip, something to wrap around a sword hilt. Or, in Izuku's case, to squeeze when he needed to ground himself. "I'm not giving you one for all today," All Might said quietly. Izuku looked up, surprised. They hadn't talked about the transfer in months. "Your sword, it's evolving," All Might explained. "It's becoming something magnificent on its own. If I give you my power now, it might confuse your body. It might overshadow your own light. Go to the exam, young Midoriya. Show them the Sword of Hope. Show them who you are. When you pass, then we'll talk about the next step." Izuku nodded. He clenched the leather grip in his hand. "Yes, sir. I'll make you proud." "You already have," All Might whispered. The UA entrance exam. The gates of UA High were intimidating. They were massive, dwarfing the students flowing through them like a river of nervous energy. Izuku wore his middle school uniform, which now felt tight around the shoulders. He clutched the strap of his backpack, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This is it. The hero course. The dream. He took a step forward, tripped on his own shoelace, and began to fall. And this is how it ends. Death by pavement before the first test. He didn't hit the ground. He floated. "Are you okay?" Izuku flailed, righting himself as gravity returned. A girl with a round face and brown bob-cut hair was smiling at him. "I used my quirk on you so you wouldn't fall," she said brightly, pressing her fingertips together. "It's bad luck to trip, right?" Thank you." Izuku managed to articulate, his face turning the color of a tomato. "Good luck on the exam." She waved and walked away. Izuku stood there, frozen. "I talked to a girl. Well, she talked to me. But still. Progress. Move it, Deku." The icy voice cut through his joy. Bakugo walked past him, hands in his pockets, not even looking at him. But as he passed, Bakugo paused. He side-eyed Izuku, noticing the way Izuku's uniform strained against his back. Bakugo scoffed, a low, guttural sound. "Don't get in my way." He walked on. No explosion. No threat. Just a dismissal. Izuku straightened his back. "I'm not getting in your way, Kaken. I'm walking beside you. The written exam. The written portion was a breeze. Izuku had spent 10 years analyzing quirks and hero laws. He breezed through the questions about criminal procedure, physics, and quirk ethics. It was the calm before the storm. The practical exam, Battle Center B. Izuku stood in a crowd of students in front of a massive urban training ground. It looked like a city district. He was wearing his green tracksuit. He had the leather grip All Might gave him tied around his wrist like a talisman. Up on a tower, President Mike was screaming about the rules. 3 types of robots. Points based on difficulty. Excuse me, a tall boy with glasses and engines in his calves raised his hand. It was the same boy who had scolded Izuku during the orientation. You mentioned 4 robots, but there are only 3 on the handout. If this is an error, it is a shame on you, eh? He turned and pointed a stiff finger at Izuku. And you! The curly-haired boy, you've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here for a field trip, leave. Izuku clamped a hand over his mouth. Sorry, the buzzer rang. Start! President Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! The crowd surged forward. Izuku was momentarily stunned, but his training kicked in. His legs, strengthened by hauling fridges through sand, propelled him forward with explosive speed. He rushed into the city. Okay. Find a robot. Destroy it. Get points. He turned a corner. A one-pointer, a speedy, wheeled robot, locked onto him. Target acquired. It lunged. Izuku stopped. He breathed in. Hope. I hope to pass. I hope to be a hero. He thrust his hand out. Shing. A golden broadsword materialized. It was solid, bright, and about 3 feet long. Izuku didn't hesitate. He stepped into the robot's guard, parrying its mechanical arm with the flat of his blade, then spun and slashed through its chassis. The blade melted through the metal plating like it was wax. The robot sparked and powered down. 1 point! Izuku gasped. But then, the reality of the exam set in. He had no mobility quirk. Other students were flying, sliding, and jumping over buildings. A guy with a laser navel blasted 3 robots at once. Bakugo was flying through the air on explosions, destroying everything in his path. Izuku had to run. He had to hunt. My sword uses stamina, he reminded himself. I have to be efficient. I can't keep it out all the time. He developed a rhythm. Run. Spot robot. Summon sword. Slash. Dismiss sword. Run. It was grueling. Slash. 2 points. Thrust. 3 points. Parry and counter. 4 points. He was racking up points, but he was slow. By the time he reached a cluster of robots, the laser guy or the engine guy had usually already destroyed them. 45 points! Someone shouted. 32 points! Izuku checked his mental tally. 28 points. It's not enough. The cutoff is usually higher. He turned a corner, panting. Sweat soaked his tracksuit. His arms were starting to feel that familiar burn. The sword of hope was hungry. And then, the ground shook. It started as a vibration in the soles of his boots. Then, the windows of the fake buildings shattered. Boom! Dust billowed from the main avenue. A shadow eclipsed the sun. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. Taller than the skyscrapers. Its green, metal face looked down at the ants below with cold indifference. It punched a building, sending debris raining down. That's huge! Run away! The other examinees turned and fled. It was the logical choice. The robot was worth 0 points. There was no reason to fight it. Izuku turned to run, too. His survival instinct was screaming. His legs were shaking. I have 28 points. Maybe it's enough? I should just survive. Ow! A cry of pain. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the dust, he saw her. The nice girl. Uraraka. She was on the ground, her leg pinned under a massive chunk of concrete debris. She was trying to lift it, but she was exhausted. The 0-pointer was looming over her. Its massive tread was grinding forward, crushing the pavement. It was going to crush her. The other students were running away. They didn't see her. Or they were too scared. Izuku looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. Be realistic, a voice in his head said. You can't stop that. But then, another voice spoke. A voice that sounded like All Might. A hero is someone who smashes through the obstacle to save the day. And then, a feeling. Not a thought. A feeling in his chest. A burning, blinding, overwhelming desire. I won't let her die. I won't let her get hurt. She was nice to me. Izuku's body moved. He turned and sprinted toward the robot. Hey! Idiot! Stop! Someone yelled. Izuku didn't hear them. He was running into the shadow of death. As he ran, he reached deep inside. He didn't just draw on his hope to pass the exam. He drew on his hope for her. He drew on the hope that he could be the shield that protects the weak. Sword of hope. Grant me power! He planted his feet in front of Uraraka. He looked up at the descending tread of the zero-pointer. He thrust both hands upward. Kaboom! This wasn't a hum. This was a thunderclap. A pillar of golden light erupted from Izuku's hands. It was blindingly white gold, searing the air. The light didn't stop at 3 feet. Or 10. It grew. And grew. A massive great sword, 20 feet long and broad as a door, materialized. It pulsed with a holy, terrifying energy. The heat coming off it turned the concrete around Izuku to glass. Uraraka, shielding her eyes, looked up in awe. What? Izuku's eyes were glowing gold. His veins were bulging. The weight of this sword was immense. It was the weight of a life. Prominence. Slash! Izuku swung. It was an uppercut swing, a motion he had practiced 1,000 times with the Bakken, but magnified by the power of a god. The blade of light struck the zero-pointer's chassis. There was no sound of metal rending. Only the sound of energy displacing matter. The great sword sliced through the robot's massive arm. It sliced through the chest plate. It continued upward, parting the clouds above the city. The sheer force of the swing created a shockwave of wind that blew the debris off Uraraka's leg, sending the concrete tumbling away. The zero-pointer groaned. Its internal systems exploded. The top half of the robot began to slide off the bottom half, the cut glowing with molten heat. Izuku stood there, the massive sword still held high. Then, the adrenaline crashed. The sword shattered into a million sparkles of light. Izuku's eyes rolled back in his head. His legs gave out. He collapsed backward. I saved her. Then blackness. The aftermath. Looks like he completely drained his glycogen stores. Severe muscle fatigue. And look at his hands, burns from the radiant heat of his own quirk. Izuku woke up to the feeling of something wet on his forehead. He opened his eyes. He was in a temporary medical tent. Recovery Girl, the youthful heroine, was standing over him. Oh good, you're awake, she croaked. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. Smooch. Izuku felt a wave of exhaustion hit him again, but the pain in his arms faded. My quirk accelerates healing, but it uses your stamina, she explained. You don't have much left to give, Sonny. You overdid it. The girl, Izuku rasped. She's fine. Just a sprained ankle. I treated her already. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Good. Then, the realization hit him. The exam was over. He had passed out. He hadn't destroyed the zero-pointer. He had just disabled it. That didn't count for points. Izuku stared at the tent ceiling. I have 28 points. It wasn't enough. He knew it. The average was usually around 40 or 50. He closed his eyes, fighting back tears. I failed. After all that training. I failed. The letter. 1 week later. The atmosphere in the Midoriya household was suffocating. Izuku sat at the dinner table, staring at a fish he hadn't touched. Inko was pacing in the kitchen, muttering nervously. Izuku hadn't heard from All Might. He felt too ashamed to call him. He had been given a chance, a trainer, and a head start, and he had blown it. Izuku? Inko called out softly. The mail is here. She held up a thick envelope with the UA seal. Izuku took it. His hands were trembling. He walked to his room. He sat at his desk. He stared at the envelope for 10 minutes. Just open it. Get it over with. He tore the seal. A metal disc slid out and clattered onto the desk. A hologram projected onto the wall. I am here as a projection. All Might filled the screen, wearing a yellow suit. All Might? Izuku gasped. Wait, this is from UA? I had to do a lot of paperwork, but I am now a teacher at UA, All Might announced. He cleared his throat. Young Midoriya. You have been waiting. You have been worrying, Izuku nodded, clutching his knees. You scored 28 villain points in the practical exam, All Might said. Izuku looked down. I knew it. If this were a simple test of destruction, you would have failed. All Might continued. His voice softened. But a hero course doesn't just reject people who do the right thing. The video changed. It showed the control room during the exam. The judges were watching the screen. This is a job about risking your life to practice your hypocrisy, All Might said. To save others. That is the true measure of a hero. The video switched to a clip of Uraraka standing in front of President Mike. Please, she was saying. The boy with the messy hair and the light sword. He saved me. Can I give him my points? He's gonna have 0 because of me. Izuku's eyes went wide. Tears began to spill. You didn't just save her physically, young Midoriya, All Might said. You inspired her. An act of true heroism. The screen showed a scoreboard. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 28, rescue points, 60, total, 88 points. Are rewarded, All Might shouted. 60 rescue points. And with your villain points you have passed with flying colors. All Might extended a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your Hero Academia. Izuku sat there, the golden light of the hologram illuminating his tear-streaked face. He looked at his hand, the hand that had forged the sword. The hand that had cleared the beach. The hand that had saved Uraraka. He clenched it into a fist. I did it! He wasn't quirkless anymore. He wasn't useless. He was the wielder of the Sword of Hope. And his journey was just beginning. The morning sun that filtered through the curtains of the Midoriya apartment didn't feel like ordinary sunlight. To Izuku, it felt like a spotlight, the kind used to illuminate a stage right before the curtain rises. He stood in front of his full-length mirror, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the red tie of his uniform. The gray blazer with the green accents, the dark trousers, the UA high school crest embroidered over his heart. It was real. It wasn't a cosplay, it wasn't a hallucination induced by sleep deprivation, and it wasn't a cruel prank. He, Izuku Midoriya, the boy who had been diagnosed as extra by society, was wearing the skin of a hero. Izuku! You're going to be late. Inko's voice drifted from the kitchen, laced with that perpetual, high-pitched worry that had become the background noise of his life. I'm coming, Mom! Izuku shouted back. He grabbed his yellow backpack. He paused for a second, looking at his desk. The charred notebook, Hero Analysis number 13, sat there next to a fresh one, Hero Analysis number 14. He picked up the new one. The pages were blank, waiting to be filled with the secrets of the next generation of heroes. He walked out of his room, the floorboards creaking under his feet. He felt heavier than usual. It wasn't just the muscle mass he had packed on over the last 10 months of hauling trash at Dagoba Beach. It was the weight of expectation. All Might's expectation. His mother's hope. And the silent, burning demand of his own soul. Inko was waiting at the door, holding a bento box wrapped in an All Might handkerchief. She looked him up and down, her eyes immediately welling up with tears. Oh, Izuku! She sniffled, grabbing a tissue from her sleeve. You look so grown up. Are you sure you have your handkerchief? And your tissues? And the ointment for your hands? Mom, I'm fine. Izuku smiled, though his stomach was doing backflips. I'm just going to school. It's not just school. It's UA. She hugged him tight, burying her face in his blazer. Just please be careful. Your quirk, it uses so much of your energy. Don't push yourself too hard on the first day, okay? I won't. He lied. He knew he would. That was the only way he knew how to exist. He stepped out of the apartment complex and into the cool spring air. The cherry blossoms were falling, painting the sidewalk in strokes of pale pink. As he walked toward the station, he flexed his right hand. He could feel it there, lurking just beneath the skin. The warmth. The sword of hope. It was a strange, symbiotic thing. It wasn't like a muscle he could flex on command. It was more like a mood he had to inhabit. If he felt despair, it vanished. If he felt fear, it shattered. To wield it, he had to be optimistic. He had to believe. It's a demanding power, he thought, boarding the train. But it's mine. The gates of Yue High were massive, a towering barrier of steel and glass that separated the ordinary world from the extraordinary. Walking through them felt like crossing a threshold into a different dimension. Izuku navigated the labyrinthine hallways, checking the map on his phone every 3 seconds. One big letters, big door. He turned a corner and stopped. The door was indeed massive, easily 20 feet tall. It was designed to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutant physiologies, but to Izuku, it just looked like a gate to a dungeon boss room. He stood there, hand hovering over the handle. Okay. Be cool. Just open the door. Don't be weird. Don't mutter. Don't trip. He took a deep breath. Hopefully, Kaken isn't in this class. The odds are low, right? There are 2 hero classes. Statistically, he slid the door open. Remove your foot from that desk immediately. Ha! Who do you think you are, 4 Eyes? Izuku froze. The universe, it seemed, enjoyed laughing at statistics. Inside, at the front of the class, Tenya Ida, the stiff, serious boy with engines in his legs from the entrance exam, was aggressively chopping the air with his hand. Sitting opposite him, with his feet resting casually on the pristine Yui desk, was Katsuki Bakugo. It is disrespectful to the Yui upperclassmen and the people who made this desk, Ida shouted, his glasses flashing in the morning light. Disrespectful? Bakugo sneered, a cruel grin stretching across his face. Whatever. Which middle school are you from, you extra? I am from semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida. Semi? Bakugo laughed, a harsh, barking sound. So you're a damn elite, huh? I'll enjoy crushing you. Crushing me? Ida recoiled, horrified. You truly aim to be a hero? Your attitude is atrocious. Izuku felt the urge to slowly slide the door closed and run away to start a new life as a hermit in the mountains. But before he could, Ida turned his head. You! The entire class turned to look at the doorway. 20 pairs of eyes fixed on Izuku. It's you! Ida said, marching toward him with robotic precision. The boy from the entrance exam. I apologize for misjudging you. I did not realize you had perceived the true nature of the practical test. And no, I didn't really. Izuku stammered, waving his hands. You realized there were rescue points, didn't you? Ida continued, his voice booming. Your actions were noble. I was blind to the hidden metrics. I hate to admit it, but you are the superior student. Izuku turned red. He could feel Bakugo's gaze burning into the side of his head like a laser. Hey! It's the plain-looking boy. Izuku spun around to see a familiar face bobbing up behind him. It was the nice girl, Ochako Uraraka. You passed! She cheered, pumping a fist in the air. I was so worried. Your sword was amazing. It was like shing and then boom. And then you passed out, and I was like, oh no! But then Recovery Girl was there, and she was speaking at a mile a minute, radiating a bubbly energy that was both infectious and overwhelming. Izuku felt his face heating up even more. She's talking to me. A girl is talking to me, and I'm not even dead. I wonder what we're doing today? Uraraka wondered, tapping her chin. The ceremony? Or maybe orientation? If you're here to make friends, you can pack up your stuff and leave. The voice came from the floor. Izuku, Uraraka, and Ida looked down. Lying in the hallway, wrapped in a bright yellow sleeping bag like a metamorphic caterpillar, was a man. He had long, messy black hair, tired eyes, and stubble that suggested he hadn't seen a razor in 3 days. He sucked on a juice pouch with the enthusiasm of a man on death row. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, unzipping the sleeping bag and standing up. He was wearing a ragged black outfit and a long gray scarf. Time is a limited resource. You kids aren't rational enough. The class fell silent. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. The man deadpanned. Homeroom teacher? The class shouted in unison. He doesn't look like a hero, Izuku analyzed rapidly. He looks worn out. But his presence, it's heavy. Is he an underground hero? Maybe Eraserhead? Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. Put these on and head to the grounds, he said, turning his back on them. Don't be late. The locker room was filled with the sounds of zippers and rustling fabric, overlaid with the nervous chatter of 15 boys trying to gauge each other. Man, did you see that, teacher? A boy with spiky red hair, Kirishima, asked, pulling his shirt off. He looks intense. I bet he's super manly. I just hope he doesn't make us run too much, sighed a short boy with purple balls on his head, Mineta. I have short legs. Izuku kept his head down, trying to change quickly. He was self-conscious. Not because he was weak, but because he was different now. Whoa, Kirishima said, pausing mid-change. He was looking at Izuku. Dude, you are shredded. Izuku froze, his shirt half on. Huh! The other boys looked over. It was undeniable. Izuku's torso was a map of defined muscle. His back was broad, his deltoids capped, and his abdominals were etched like stone. The scars from the beach cleanup, small nicks from metal shards, only added to the rugged look. You don't look like the type. A blond boy with a lightning bolt streak in his hair, Kaminari, whistled. You look like a tank underneath that blazer. I trained a lot recently. Izuku mumbled, pulling the blue gym shirt down quickly to hide his physique. Across the room, Bakugo slammed his locker shut. The metal clanged loudly, silencing the chatter. Bakugo stood there, shirtless. He was muscular too, lean and wiry, built for explosive movement. He stared at Izuku's back. When? Bakugo thought, his teeth grinding together. When did he get that body? A year ago he was a twig. And that light sword. Was he lying? Was he laughing at me this whole time, acting weak just to humiliate me later? Steam began to rise from Bakugo's palms. The smell of burning sugar, nitroglycerin, filled the air. Hey Bakugo, you okay? Kirishima asked. You're smoking. Shut up, shitty hair. Bakugo growled, pulling his shirt on violently. He stormed out of the locker room. Izuku watched him go, a knot forming in his stomach. The Sword of Hope relied on positive emotion, but Bakugo had a unique talent for inspiring anxiety. The pea grounds were vast, an open expanse of dirt and grass surrounded by the gleaming towers of the main campus. The class gathered in a loose semicircle around Aizawa. A quirk apprehension test? The class chorused. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked, raising her hand. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said, his voice bored. UA's selling point is freedom. And that applies to the teachers as well. He turned to face them, his dark eyes scanning the group. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? But you were prohibited from using your quirks. He held up a ball with a digital display. The country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the average of records. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. Aizawa tossed the ball up and caught it. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam, right? Yeah. Bakugo grunted. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said, pointing to a circle painted on the ground. You can do whatever you want, as long as you stay in the circle. Don't hold back. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his arms, a wicked grin spreading across his face. He glanced back at Izuku for a split second. Watch this, Deku. Watch true power. Bakugo wound up. Dai! He hurled the ball. At the moment of release, a massive explosion erupted from his palm. Boom! The blast propelled the ball forward like a cannon shot. It tore through the air, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa held up the device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! Kaminari shouted. 705 meters? That's insane! This looks like fun! Pink-skinned Ishido cheered. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Awesome! Siro added. Izuku watched the ball land in the distance. That power. Kaken really is amazing. He combines the propulsive force with the throw perfectly. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. Fun, huh? The class quieted down. You have 3 years to become a hero, Aizawa said softly, but his voice carried a dangerous weight. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He grinned, a terrifying, predatory smile that didn't reach his eyes. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He swept his hair back, revealing his bloodshot eyes, and will be punished with expulsion. Huh! The scream was collective. Expulsion? Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters. Big accidents. Selfish villains. Aizawa listed off. Calamities whose time and place can't be predicted. Japan is covered in unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. He pocketed his hands. If you wanted to go hang out at a burger joint with your friends, that's too bad. For the next 3 years, Yui will do everything it can to crush you. Welcome to the hero course. Izuku swallowed hard. The sword of hope in his gut flickered and dimmed. Expulsion. If he was expelled, All Might's training, the beach, the dream, it would all be for nothing. No, Izuku thought, clenching his fists. I can't let that happen. All Might chose me. I have to prove I'm worthy. He looked at his classmates. They were all nervous, but he could see the resolve hardening in their eyes. Let's do this, Izuku whispered. Test 1, 50-meter dash. The track was lined with sensors and cameras. On your mark, the robot voice intoned. Izuku crouched in the lane. Next to him was Bakugo. Great, Izuku thought. First test, first matchup. He looked at the finish line. 50 meters. It was a sprint. Should I use the sword? Izuku wondered. I could use it to vault? Or maybe create a blast of light behind me for propulsion? No. It drains stamina too fast. If I use it now, I'll be tired for the later tests. I need to rely on the vessel. Get set, pow. Bakugo launched himself backward with an explosion, flying through the air. Burst speed! Izuku drove his legs into the ground. He didn't have explosions. He didn't have engines. He just had the muscles built from dragging 400-pound fridges through sand. He sprinted. His form was perfect, head down, knees high, arms pumping. Bakugo crossed the line. 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed right behind him. 5.51 seconds. The class murmured. Whoa, he's fast for a guy without a speed quirk. Kirishima noted. 5.5 seconds is high school athlete level. Ida observed, adjusting his glasses. His physical conditioning is superb. Bakugo landed and turned around, expecting to see Izuku far behind. When he saw Izuku panting just a few meters away, his eye twitched. You didn't use your damn nightlight. Bakugo snarled as they walked back. I didn't need to. Izuku panted. Bakugo's hands crackled. Saving it? Or are you just looking down on me? I'm trying to stay in school, Kakin, Izuku said, walking past him. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the dynamometer. He imagined crushing a piece of coal into a diamond. Beep. 68 kilograms. Whoa! 540 kilograms? Siro shouted. Everyone looked at Shoji, the multi-armed student. He had crushed the device. You're a monster! Mineta squeaked. Izuku looked at his own score. Above average, but nowhere near the top. I need to be smart. Test 3, standing long jump. This was it. Pure leg strength wouldn't cut it against people who could fly. Izuku stepped up to the line. He needed distance. Okay. First use of the day. He closed his eyes. He pictured a bridge. A ramp of light. Hope. He thrust his hand downward. Shing. A beam of solid light struck the ground at a 45-degree angle. It wasn't a sword. It was a pole, thick and sturdy. Izuku grabbed the hilt of the light pole and vaulted. He used his momentum and the leverage of the solid light to fling himself forward. As he flew through the air, he released the construct. It dissolved into sparkles. He landed in the sand pit, clearing the sandbox. Ooh, creative! Hagakure, the invisible girl, clapped. He made a vaulting pole, Aizawa watched with half-lidded eyes. He creates solid constructs. The shape is malleable based on his intent. Interesting. but he hesitated before summoning it. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta dominated this one, bouncing back and forth like a pinball. Izuku relied on his agility, scoring well but not exceptionally. Test 5, the ball throw. This was the main event. The other tests were just warm-ups. This was the test where raw power mattered most. Uraraka stepped up. "Good luck," Izuku whispered. She smiled, touched the ball with her fingertips, and threw it. It floated gently upward. And upward. And upward. It didn't stop. Aizawa showed the display. "Infinity." "Infinity?" the class screamed. "That's cheating." Kaminari laughed. Izuku swallowed hard. "Infinity. You can't beat infinity." The bar just went through the roof. "Midoriya!" Aizawa called. "You're up." Izuku walked to the circle. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. This is the moment. I have to show them. I have to show Aizawa-sensei that I belong here. He picked up the ball. It felt heavy. He looked at the field. It was vast. If I just throw it, I'll get maybe 60 meters. That's not enough. I need to use the sword. He took a stance. He gripped the ball in his left hand. He prepared to summon the sword in his right. All Might said to visualize. I need a bat. No, a paddle. Something to transfer all the kinetic energy. He focused. Hope. I hope to fly. I hope to reach the sky. He wound up. He tossed the ball into the air. Now, he swung his right arm. Thum. A golden broadsword materialized. It was jagged, crackling with anxious energy. Izuku swung it toward the falling ball. Smash! Suddenly, the light vanished. Izuku's arm swung through empty air. The ball hit his shoulder and fell to the ground with a pathetic thud. 46 meters. Ha! Izuku blinked. The light, it went out. He looked at his hand. He tried to summon it again. Nothing. It felt like the connection had been severed. I erased your quirk. Izuku turned around. Aizawa was standing there. His scarf was floating around him like a nest of snakes. His hair was standing on end. And his eyes, they were glowing a terrifying blood red. That ridiculous entrance exam. Aizawa muttered, staring at Izuku. It wasn't rational. They let a kid in who can't control his own power. You're the Erasure hero, Eraserhead. Izuku gasped. Eraser? I don't know him. Some students murmured. I saw it in the vaulting test, Aizawa said, ignoring the class. He walked closer to Izuku, invading his personal space. You hesitated. And just now, your blade was jagged. Unstable. He glared down at Izuku. From what I watched on the footage, your quirk is tied to your emotional state. Stamina and willpower. When you get nervous, when you doubt yourself, your sword becomes brittle. And just now, you were terrified. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You can't be a hero if your weapon breaks every time you get scared. What will you do when a villain is staring you down? When lives are on the line? Will you lose your hope then? Will your sword vanish and leave you defenseless? Izuku trembled. The words cut deeper than any blade. It was his worst fear laid bare. I returned your quirk, Aizawa said, his hair falling back down. He blinked, his eyes returning to black. You have 2 attempts for the ball throw. Hurry up and get it over with. He turned away. He has 0 potential, he muttered to himself. Izuku stood in the circle. The ball lay at his feet. He's right, Izuku thought. I am scared. I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of Kaken. I'm scared of letting All Might down. He picked up the ball. But, he looked at Aizawa's back. He looked at his classmates. He looked at the sky. A hero is someone who smashes through the fear. Even if I'm scared, I still have to move. I still have to save myself. He closed his eyes. He didn't try to force the fear away. He acknowledged it. I am scared. But I am also here. He thought about the beach. He thought about the sunrise over the clean sand. That feeling of accomplishment. That was real. I don't need a sharp blade right now, he realized. I don't need to cut. I need to push. I need to send this ball flying with everything I have. He opened his eyes. They weren't trembling anymore. He tossed the ball into the air. He twisted his hips. He engaged his legs. He engaged his core. 1 second. Just for 1 second. Focus everything. Sword of hope. At the very last millisecond, as his arm came around, the light exploded from his hand. It wasn't a sword. It wasn't a jagged mess. It was a flat, dense slab of golden light, shaped like a massive cricket bat. It pulsed with a concentrated, blinding white core. Home run! Crack! The sound was like a gunshot. The slab of light connected with the ball. The air pressure shockwave blasted dust outward from the circle. The ball didn't just fly, it vanished. It screamed into the stratosphere, riding a beam of golden light that lingered in the air for a few seconds like a contrail. Izuku followed through with the swing, exhaling sharply. The light paddle vanished instantly, preserving his stamina. He stood there, his fists clenched. His arm throbbed, not from the quirk, but from the sheer physical force of the swing. He turned to Aizawa. Sensei. Izuku held up his hand. It was shaking, but he clenched it into a fist to stop it. I still have hope. Aizawa looked at the boy. Then he looked at the device in his hand. 705.3 meters. Aizawa's lips twitched. It was barely visible, hidden behind his scarf, but it was there. A smile. 0.1 meters further than Bakugo. Aizawa noted. The silence was shattered. What? Bakugo stood frozen. His brain was short-circuiting. 700 meters? He beat me? DKU beat me? Rage, hot and blinding, overtook him. DKU! Bakugo launched himself forward, explosions popping in his palms. You bastard! Tell me how you did that! You've been hiding this for years? He sprinted toward the circle, intent on blowing Izuku up. Izuku flinched, raising his arms. Here it comes! Flip. A gray cloth ribbon shot out, wrapping around Bakugo's torso and arms. It tightened instantly, binding him like a mummy. Gah! What is this? Bakugo struggled, but the cloth was like steel wire. It's a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy, Aizawa said, holding the other end of the scarf. His hair was floating again. His eyes were red. Stop using your quirks. You're giving me dry eye. You're wasting time. Aizawa droned. Next up, he released Bakugo. Bakugo stumbled, glaring at Izuku with a hatred that could melt steel. But he didn't attack. He couldn't. Aizawa's presence was too overwhelming. Izuku scurried back to the group, his heart racing. That was amazing! Uraraka cheered, high-fiving him. You hit it out of the park! Literally, 700 meters. Ida nodded approvingly. You maximized the surface area of the kinetic impact. Very rational. Izuku looked at his hand. He had done it. He had faced the fear, faced the erasure, and he had swung. The results. The sun was setting by the time the test concluded. The class gathered around a holographic display board Aizawa had projected. I'm not going to announce the scores individually, Aizawa said. Look at the board. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Please don't be last. Please don't be last. He opened one eye. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 7. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Toru Hagakure. 7th? Izuku gasped. He wasn't last. He wasn't even in the bottom half. His physical scores from the dash, the jump, and the endurance run, combined with the massive score from the ball throw, had pushed him up the ranks. Mineta was 19th. Hagakure was 20th. Toru Hagakure's gloves were trembling. Last place. I'm expelled? The class went silent. The weight of the moment settled in. Someone was going home. Aizawa pressed a button, and the hologram vanished. By the way, the expulsion was a lie. It was a logical ruse to draw out the upper limits of your quirks, Aizawa said, turning to walk away. What? The class screamed again. I knew it! Yaoyorozu, the tall girl with the ponytail, sighed. It was obviously a pedagogical technique. I didn't know. Mineta wept tears of blood. I was so scared. Izuku slumped, his soul leaving his body for the second time that day. A lie, thank God. As the students began to pack up, Aizawa walked away toward the main building. He turned a corner and stopped. Hiding behind the wall was All Might, peeking out like a stalker. You're a liar, Aizawa-kun, All Might whispered. Aizawa glanced at him. All Might. So you were watching, a logical ruse? All Might scoffed. April Fool's was last week. You expelled an entire class last year because you deemed them hopeless. You cut people without hesitation if they have zero potential. All Might pointed a finger. You saw potential in him, didn't you? That's why you didn't cut him. Aizawa looked back at the field, where Izuku was laughing with Uraraka and Ida. That kid, Aizawa murmured. His quirk is powerful, but his mentality is his real weapon. Or his real weakness. He's a night type. He wants to protect so badly it overrides his survival instinct. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He's reckless. He breaks himself to meet expectations. But he pushed past the fear. There's something there. A light that doesn't go out easily. He started walking again. But don't get comfortable, All Might. If he dips below the line, I'll expel him. Potential is nothing if it isn't polished. All Might grinned as Aizawa walked away. He's tough, young Midoriya. But you survived the first cut. Now, the real work begins.